Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the August 6, 2020 Romeo Planning Commission meeting. We're going to begin by hearing public comment on a proposed ordinance change to allow for the sale of marijuana. If you have anything to contribute, please do. I'm going to give this 2 or 3 minutes. Okay, 1 more minute. All right, then let's move on to the regular meeting of the Romeo Planning Commission. We'll begin with roll call.
Stegner,
Here.
Fowler, Grandstaff, Foltz,
Here.
Davis,
Yes.
Stevens,
Here.
Smiles,
Here.
Webb,
Here.
Hall. Okay.
All right, let's move on to the approval of last month's agenda. Does anybody have anything to change or any comments on the agenda from last month? All right, motions to approve. Anybody want to make a motion?
Second.
I'm sorry, who was the first?
Stevens makes a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay.
Okay,
Second.
Second, Foltz,
Yep.
okay, roll call vote, please.
Davis,
Yes.
Webb,
Yeah.
Oh,
Stegner,
what did I do? I go, yes, here, yes, no,
Smiles.
Yes.
Okay.
all right, actually, I screwed that up. We need to add something to the agenda for tonight, 2 items. We need to pick a date to hear a request for special land use by AAA. So I'd like to add that to the agenda. And also we need to discuss this ordinance for marijuana, this zoning change. So I'm going to make a motion that we add those two things to the agenda. Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay, Cindy. Roll call.
Webb,
Yeah.
Fowler, Stevens,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Smiles,
Yes.
Hall, Foltz,
Yes.
Grandstaff, not here. Okay,
All right, now we come to the public forum of our meeting. Does anybody have anything to say? Anybody like to contribute to tonight's meeting?
Yeah, I'm Tom Surkoff. I'm present in the meeting this evening, so whenever you guys need me or you have any comments, just let me know.
Okay, just go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it looks like you added us to the agenda. Basically, we just wanted to try and speed up the process and request a special meeting for sometime on or around the 25th to the 27th of August. We turned paperwork in on a Friday of the 17th to be in today's meeting, but for whatever reason, we thought it was 15 days and everywhere else it said 15 days, but now someone's saying 20 or 21, which we couldn't find that located anywhere on the website. So hopefully we can get the special meeting request granted.
Okay, well, we're going to do that tonight. So anybody else have anything to add via phone or? No. Okay, so let's start with our unfinished business from last month. That was the Penn Paloma Company's Bailey Street application for site plan approval. Anybody have any comment? Well, there are a few obstacles in the way, like vacating the alley, and those obstacles have been largely removed, or they have been removed actually. So does anybody on the planning commission have any comment about that? And I want to just sort of remind everybody that everybody on the commission who would like to say something, has an opinion to express, or any thoughts, all thoughts are appreciated and welcome. So just direct your comments to the chair and we'll get rolling. So. Anybody have any comments about this development, the site plan?
I think the only thing, Mr. Chair, it's Jay Foltz. So I thought the only thing we had left to talk about really was just vacating the alley, and it seemed like they were working on that at their board meeting. But I think everything else we were good on, right?
I think that's correct, yes. So
So we just for a motion to approve.
I would say yes.
Okay.
So anybody want to make a motion?
I make a motion.
motion by Webb,
Motion by
What's your
Webb.
I'll second the motion, Davis.
Hold on just 1 second, please. Motion by Webb to approve the site plan for Papilloma site. I don't have it. It's fallen off my desk. Okay, anybody want a second?
I'll second, Kim Davis.
second by Davis,
Yes.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Stegner,
Yes.
Foltz,
Yeah.
Stevens,
Yes.
Smiles.
Yes.
Okay.
Is that everyone? Yes.
Yes, that's everyone who's here.
Okay, so the motion carries. The site plan is approved.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to any discussion about comment on the zoning ordinance change. Anybody want to add to it? Subtract, comments? Nobody has anything to say? Okay. So we'll move on to pick date for AAA's application for a variance in the street there on Main Street. So,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, yes.
I just wanted to advise you this has to be published in the newspaper, and we have to put notice, send notice to everybody within 300 feet, and it has to be done a minimum of 15 days prior to the meeting. So you got to work backwards from there.
Yeah, I discussed that with the president. So what is our earliest date? It's the 26th of September. Excuse me, August. Is that correct?
The 26th or 27th, yes.
All right.
They are currently scheduled to be on your next regular meeting, which is going to be held September 10th. But if you want to have a special meeting, we can remove them from that agenda. We can get it published. We can get the letter sent out, and you can hold it as early as August 27th.
Who's available for that? Is that a good date for anybody?
Mr. Webb, can you do the 26th?
People,
Is that at 7 o'clock still?
yes, we were making it 7.
Okay, I can be available.
Okay.
Davis?
So we have
Is there a
one.
reason? Sorry, Mr. Chair. Is
Go ahead.
there a reason at our next meeting?
I'm sorry, you dropped out.
Is there a reason we can't do it at just our next board meeting, our next planning commission meeting?
Actually, I don't see any reason why we can't. Wasn't there some urgency on their part, Madam President, that they wanted to do it sooner?
They want to expedite the process, yes. There was just a timing issue of when their special land use application documents were submitted to us in time for us to get it published for this meeting. They missed that deadline a bit, and so then we just went ahead and notified them that it would be in September, but they are requesting that you hold a special just to expedite the process. So it's totally your decision as a board what you want to do.
All right, so we have 5 board members here tonight. Do you want to expedite this or just leave it for the next meeting? What are your opinions on that?
Mr. Chairman, Smiles here.
Yes.
I seen going by, there's already signs of AAA on 104 South Main Street. Are they already in the building?
Christine, Madam President, would you like to address that? Because I know you know about that.
Yes. At this time, we did not issue any permits, whether it's a zoning compliance certification for them to actually open to start commencing business. We also didn't issue a permit for the sign at this time because I still had some questions on whether or not their usage would be permitted in the location that they have chosen. So in order for them to hopefully not incur any expenses, we didn't issue that permit. But the sign has been installed, as you noted.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
Smiles here.
Yes.
I would like to make a motion to hold the agenda for the regular September meeting.
Their application.
Yes, sir.
Would anybody like to second that? I'll second. I'll go ahead and second it, Cindy. So roll call vote on that to hear their application on our regular meeting as opposed to expediting That's our motion. So want to go ahead and make a roll call? Cindy?
Fowler, Foltz,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Webb,
Yes.
Stevens.
Yes.
That's it, Jim.
Okay, so motion passes to hear their application on our regular meeting date in September. All right, so Christine and Tom Stevens are going to make an presentation on the Village to City committee and what they've been talking about, and you're free to start talking.
If I may, Chairman Stegner, thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to present the 2020 Village to City Exploratory Committee report. I've prepared a brief summary of the report to present to the Planning Commission. While I have attempted to highlight important points from this report, I strongly encourage the Commission and any resident who's interested, for that matter, to read the report in its entirety. It was provided to you in your board packet because its content is quite extensive. It should be noted that the Village to City Incorporation item has been considered multiple times over the last 60 years through a variety of initiatives. The last consideration to this process was done in 1994 and was actually presented by the Planning Commission. That work was done through your board, through a board. But the question of cityhood has never taken the next step in the process, which is to actually let the citizens vote on the question. So we're addressing this. We've started investigating this through a committee, and I appreciate Tom Stevens serving on that committee as a representative from the Planning Commission. So Tom, at any time you want to jump in and add to my talking points, please feel free to do that.
Okay.
I'm just going to proceed. There's some pros and cons, of course, the Village of Romeo must consider when deciding whether to incorporate as a city. While the reasons not to incorporate are not as numerous as the pros, they are very important. Those cons include the cost. It's estimated that it costs probably about $30,000 in our best estimates to complete this process, and the length of time to incorporate, which could be usually 2 to 3 year process. Potential impacts on the political relationships between Bruce and Washington Township we considered could be a con, and the loss of tax revenue to the townships would certainly be a negative in their financial situation. This report primarily identifies several reasons for incorporation, the pros, and they include the list of the following highlights. I've shared my screen with this list, so if I could just proceed in the reading of them, because they're pretty key. Michigan cities and villages. The Village of Romeo's population and square mileage is more consistent with the median cities than Michigan villages. Romeo's population of 3,596 residents, that's based on the last census, not the current one that's being conducted, marks it as the 8th most populated village in the state of Michigan. I think we all consider ourselves to be a pretty small village, but the numbers really show something different. We are the only village left in the entire state of Michigan that is part of 2 townships. And we also considered that we recently annexed part of Ray Township in the property out in our industrial corridor, and we're considering an annexation request by another couple of developers that would be part of our Meta Township. So we could see ourselves having residents and business owners that share 4 different systems of government to deal with. That's kind of complex. The local representation and the services. If incorporated as a city, citizens would communicate with one unified government instead of the 2 that most residents deal with, or the possibility of 3 or 4 depending on where you're situated. And so instead of several different local governments. It would create an ease of locating property documents and resources from one body of government, especially given the historic nature of most of the properties. So we would, through this process, be responsible for doing our assessing and our elections. Right now, it's a sort of a disadvantage to the residents who come in here needing some assessing document, be directed to seek their answers at either township offices. So it would be much easier if they were all housed and we could perform those services within our city offices. We looked at the demographics. The Village of Romeo is significantly demographically different than both of the townships. We all know that Bruce has committed to stay rural, and Washington becomes more populated like a suburb. The village has become more divided and receives less political attention than it has historically experienced through the number of years that we've been in this tri-community relationship. I think we have seen that the input that we get from the townships to what actually our citizens pay for in the village is quite limited. According to SEMCOG, Romeo will remain much the same in population size. We're pretty much landlocked. Aside from development that's happening out in our industrial corridor, we don't really have a lot of property. We don't really see a big expansion in our housing and the number of residents that are going to be, coming as people move in and out. The numbers basically we think are going to stay the same. While we know that there's been significant growth in Washington Township, and that's going to continue to develop, Bruce Township is also going to stay rural, so their numbers would stay quite the same. If you look at the land use and the community character, development patterns in the township are diverging and not consistent with the community character of the Village of Romeo. We found that certainly Romeo is unique, which is it's precisely what draws the people to the village. Everybody likes our unique historic character and charm, and we want to make sure that we're able to preserve that. The charter versus general law village. As a city, the Village of Romeo community members would be able to draft and adopt its own unique charter with governing principles that are specific to the needs of the community. It will provide more local government control rather than being controlled by the state legislature. We're bound by the general village law, which was created in 1896 and hasn't really changed much since then. So as more municipalities and cities draft their own charter, they dictate how they want to operate. That charter as drafted would say, what form of government do you want? Do you want to stay as, a strong mayor? Do you want to hire a city manager? Or do you, want 5 city trustee or how's that look? We would be in control of our own destiny, per se, by developing our own charter. The unique opportunity to develop our own definition of what the new Village of Romeo looks like by listening to our residents, and we can certainly keep everything that works great in the village and address those areas that need improvement. Doing this process, I must strongly state that it doesn't really change anything other than the form of government. So through the process, we have to meet with the township leaders. We have to look at all of the shared services. Parks and Rec was a big item that we talked about many, many times. And just because we become a city does not mean that we would leave that partnership, that we would provide our own Parks and Rec. We would still look to get input from our residents, and what they would wish to happen is what our government, the government leaders would be directed to do. So it doesn't mean, again, a big change. Our zoning stays the same. This process doesn't change any zoning that we currently have or what that looks like. We certainly can change the zoning, but that's through the master plan process, which you are working on now. So again, the city incorporation doesn't necessarily dictate that sort of change. One of the biggest areas that we spent a lot of time as a subcommittee looking at the financials and the taxation. The committee reviewed financial projections demonstrating the cost to provide the same services we currently receive, and that would be break even to the city taxpayers, resulting in 0 tax increases if we were to incorporate, with the possibility of a decrease if we were to contract our assessing services with one of the townships that currently provide that. Incorporation assures all taxpayers in Romeo with equal services for equal taxation rate rather than the current separate tax rates and potential differing levels of service, depending on which side of 32 Mile Road the taxpayer lives in. Currently, the Village of residents who are north of 32 Mile Road pay a higher tax rate for assessing and for elections than those that are on the south side of 32 Mile Road. And the north side also pays an administration fee to receive their tax bills from the township. So there is definitely a two-level system of what our residents are paying for basically the same services. If we were to become a city, you would get 2 tax bills instead of 3 tax bills, and it would be equal across the whole board. So I think that's a pretty big reason in itself why we need to take a look at this process.
And Christine, I'll chime in on that point real quick, is that being autonomous is going to give us an opportunity there in terms of the savings. There won't be, it would be a wash. In other words, the cost that we'll take for this process, and Christine, correct me if I'm wrong, take for this process would really be a wash based on the savings we'd have with what Christine has already talked about in terms of our autonomy and not having to have these other services we have to pay for. Am I correct in that, Christine?
The costs associated with this process really are those the legal fees and the filing fees that the state of Michigan requires. There is a quite lengthy application process. We need to get a boundary survey done, and that's where the bulk of those costs are going to come into play. It's not, and also creating a ballot initiative. If you want to put it forward, it costs money to actually submit a ballot initiative to the county to have the ballots printed so that the taxpayers or the residents of voters can actually go and color in the circle, yes or no, and what that wording looks like. So those are the costs that are sort of upfront if we decide to move this forward, which Village Council already voted to do that. Those costs would be upfront until we get to that point of a ballot initiative that the residents actually get to say yes or no. So our job in the meantime is really just educating, getting the word out there, getting people the information that they need to understand why we need to do this, and give them a chance to voice their opinion.
And also this would create the opportunity for the village residents to make the decisions throughout the entire town. One of the things that's very important is that we have a strong central business district. And because there are outside forces that'll be competing with us, and not that competition is bad, it's good, but we want to be able to make those decisions internally among the village residents to improve our downtown. And I know that may sound a little strange, but there are forces that are going to be competing with us that we want to keep our village strong. We want them to prosper too, but we want to be able to make our own decisions in that respect.
Right. And a good example of that, just I'm sure maybe not everybody's aware, so maybe I shouldn't say I'm sure. The master plan that Washington Township is working has the creation of their own village district. Historically, the Village of Romeo has served as the central business district for both townships. They both benefited from the businesses that are here paying taxes into those townships. But clearly Washington is looking to develop its own small CBD. And that sort of changes the focus, right? Their focus is going to be where they can grow the most. And again, we're sort of landlocked in that. So we have to take a look at preserving, what is uniquely Romeo to us. A couple of the things that the committee did just in conclusion, I know we're probably running a little long, sorry about that, Chairman Stegner, but the committee members did reach out to a lot of the public. They were asked to speak to some of their residents, their neighbors, and get some responses to a couple of questions. And so just a couple of key points that we really wanted to share that we took into consideration is that everybody wanted it to remain the Village of Romeo. Everybody loves our name. We love our name. And certainly through this process, even if we do incorporate into a city, we can still be called the city of the Village of Romeo. Well, however the charter committee wants to draft our charter, that's what the name becomes. So it can still include the word village. So we didn't have to change that little characteristic. Of course, they talked a lot about Parks and Rec, as I mentioned before, and maintaining those current partnerships. And they looked again at that process. What does this look like, and what's the cost to the residents? But it was unanimously voted on that we thought that it was time as a committee to let the people, the residents of Romeo, have a say in this. And so they recommended, and I indicated that the village council approved by a vote of 5-2 to move to phase 2 and 3, which you'll see in that report. If you look at it, it lays out all of the steps in this process in that lengthy 2 to 3 year time, but with the goal of getting a ballot initiative put together, hopefully in 2021 at some point, so that the residents actually could vote. So that's the talking points. I'm happy to answer any questions. I really would hope that the Planning Commission members would also take an opportunity to speak to your neighbors, talk to your friends and get some feedback. Help us to provide answers to where people may have questions, or at least get the correct information out there if they're basing this on inaccuracies. So I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Anything else?
Thank you, Christine.
Excuse me, Chairman.
Yes.
Chairman Stegner. The only thing that I'm missing is we didn't do an approval of the meeting minutes from July 9th, 2020.
I did that again. Okay. Anybody want to make that motion?
Make that motion, Tom Stevens. Approve the minutes from the meeting for July.
I'll second that. Roll call, please.
Smiles,
Yes.
Foltz,
Yes.
Webb,
Yes.
Hall,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
I believe that's it.
So the motion passes.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, does anybody have anything to add to tonight's meeting?
Mr. Chairman, you still need to vote on the marijuana to make a recommendation to forward it to council or not, as a recommend approval or denial of that.
Okay. Boy.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
this is Jay Foltz. Yeah, so on that oratory deal, so the one thing I'm wondering, I know it says we can decide whatever governments and whatnot that we want to go with if we did go that way. So potentially we could be dissolving like the DDA and Planning Commission and things of that nature then too, then correct, possibly?
So the process would include the ballot initiative where the residents would vote yes or no to proceed to phase 3. And at that same time, they elect a charter commission. The charter commission is not made up of any of your current board of trustees. So we're excluded from running. We maintain the services and we continue, operations during the whole process. It is the charter commission that would draft whatever changes or however they wanted the government to be formed. And then it goes back to the voters for a second ratification. Once they actually see the charter and can review it, pending approval from the state of Michigan, of course, then it goes back to the voters before it's actually enacted. At the second vote, then you vote for your new form of government, which would be your city council members, and it's typically a mayor. Whether it's a strong form of mayor of government, which is what we kind of have now with a strong president, where I'm sort of running the day-to-day operations, you can have a mayor that does the same thing, or you could have a mayor who is just runs the meetings, and then you hire a city manager to do the day-to-day operations. So it's really up to that charter commission to draft that. It doesn't necessarily mean that we would eliminate the DDA by any means. Again, that plan, that TIF plan is still in place. It just slides over onto the city side instead of a village side. Does that answer your question?
But the possibility is there.
The possibility that it would eliminate the DDA? Well, there's,
Well, yeah, it could potentially, depending on who gets in. I just want to make sure I'm clear. It could potentially get rid of the other small boards and have technically one.
it's the same potential that you would have now at the village council level that we have right now. We could make a motion to eliminate our TIF plan and eliminate the DDA right now. So
Exactly.
technically that potential is always there. It's not going to be any greater
You cannot
or less
eliminate the planning
if we do
commission.
the cityhood process.
I'm sorry, Steve?
You cannot eliminate the planning commission. That's required by law in any type of government.
But in terms of the DDA, you could move to
That's discretionary. Planning.
discretionary, right? And that millage is paid by the building owners downtown anyway. And the purpose of that initially, when I first was involved with it, which has been a long time, was beautification and opportunities for grants and different things like that that have done some wonderful things in town. But yeah, that could be changed if it was decided to do so.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I was asked by the DDA vice chairman to check into that for the DDA meeting and what would happen to the DDA. So I contacted the county, and what I was advised was that they spoke with someone at the village of Dexter who went through a similar process, and they advised that from what they had discussed, nothing changes when you incorporate or transition into a city. Everything is the same unless there is something specific that is in direct conflict between the new city charter and the language adopted in the DDA. And that is directly from John Colcassi at the Macomb County Planning and Economic Development Department in Mount Clemens.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, somebody want to make the motion, or? I don't see any other business.
We have, Stegner, we still have to make a motion on
The marijuana thing?
yes.
Okay. So would somebody like to, conjure up a motion for that, or do you have questions still? Anyone?
I do not have any questions myself.
All right, well, do you want to make a motion then that we approve this?
Yeah, I'd make that motion.
Second.
That we approve this marijuana bill.
Second by Webb.
Mr. Webb, okay, roll call vote, please.
Hall,
Yes.
Smiles,
Yes.
Davis,
Yes.
Stevens,
Yes.
Stegner.
Yes,
Okay.
motion carries. Okay. Somebody like to make a motion to adjourn?
Motion that we adjourn.
Motion by Webb.
Hey, can I ask one more thing? So now, what are we doing on this village city exploratory thing? Are we just kind of pondering, looking over this? Where are we at with this right now?
Do we need a motion? Yeah, I'm a little confused. Do we need a motion to go forward then and say, or the planning commission agrees with this, or Christine?
I'm not sure.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to speak out of turn, Mr. Chairman.
That's
It really
fine.
was just informational.
Yeah, we're not making, there's no action going to be taken on this. It's just to inform us what's going on.
Okay.
Jim, we have a motion to adjourn by Webb, and I need a support for that.
Support. Stephen.
Support by Stevens.
Okay,
Davis?
roll call.
Yes. Support by
Yeah.
Steve.
Smiles,
Yes.
Foltz,
Yes.
Stegner,
Yes.
Hall.
Yes.
Okay, that's it, Jim.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.